Before I get into the video, I need to make it known that while doing research for this project, I came across an overwhelming amount of information about the atrocities that the Palestinian people face and have been facing for decades. I could not put even a tenth of that info in this video. Plenty of very important information was left out so that I could make a video that was succinct and made my point while keeping it to a timely manner. Okay, let's get into it. Before we get into the war, before the rubble, the famine, the sniped children, we need to go back, because what's happening now didn't begin on October 7th. It's part of a system, a decades-long system of settler colonialism and apartheid, sustained by militarism, global impunity, and deeply racist ideology. What we're watching in Palestine is not just a war. It's not just occupation. It is genocide and the continuation of a settler colonial project, one that mirrors every colonial project that came before it. The British in North America, the Spanish in South America, the Dutch in South Africa, the French in Algeria. The pattern is always the same. A foreign population arrives, claims a divine or racial right to the land, demonizes and displaces the indigenous people, steals resources, builds borders, writes discriminatory laws, and rewrites history. Israel is not a state with flaws. It's a settler colonial state by design, built on the forced removal of Palestinians, legitimized by discriminatory laws, and reinforced through military occupation. Settler colonialism is not just about occupation. It's about replacement, designed to remove the native population and replace them with a new one permanently. Unlike classical colonialism, where the colonizer comes to extract wealth and leaves, settler colonialism wants the land without the people. It seeks to eliminate the indigenous presence, not just subjugate it. It does this through a combination of tactics: mass displacement, legal erasure, violence and surveillance, cultural destruction, and narrative control. The goal is always the same. They do not belong here. We do. And so the native becomes the foreigner, the invader becomes the citizen, and the crime becomes a country. Fact: in 1948, over 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from their homes. It's called the Nakba. More than 500 towns and villages were destroyed or depopulated, bulldozed, burned, erased from the map. Some of them no longer exist even in name. Others were renamed in Hebrew and resettled by European Jews. Entire Palestinian communities were flattened and replaced. Israeli historians now confirm what Palestinians have said for decades. The Nakba was not a tragic accident or the fog of war. It was a systematic campaign of ethnic cleansing, designed to create a Jewish majority by force. Israel's founding prime minister, David Ben-Gurion, wrote in his diary, "We must do everything to ensure they never return." He did, and they never were able to. And this didn't just happen in Palestine. It's part of a longer, bloodier history. In North America, the Trail of Tears saw over 100,000 Native Americans forcibly removed from their ancestral lands by the US government. Entire nations, the Cherokee, Muskogee, Seminole, Chickasaw, and Choctaw, were marched westward at gunpoint. Thousands died along the way. Their lands were cleared, then claimed. Their towns replaced. The same settler colonial logic: mass displacement, erasure of indigenous life, replacement by settler populations. Whether it's 1830s Georgia or 1948 Palestine, the tools are the same: remove, replace, rename. Fact: Israel passed laws to prevent refugees from returning. The Absentees Property Law declared that the homes, lands, and belongings of Palestinian refugees now belong to the state. Refugees were reclassified as absentees, even if they were just a few miles away. Contrast this with Israel's law of return, which promotes the idea that God gave Palestinian land specifically to Jewish people and allows any Jew anywhere in the world, whether European, South American, Asian, or Black, who have no connection to the land, the right to settle in Israel. Palestinians denied, even if their families still hold the keys to homes they were driven out of. From the beginning, Israel was not just a state, it was a settler project. Fact: Israel has over 65 laws that discriminate against Palestinians. These laws aren't accidental laws. They are the blueprint of apartheid. They include laws that push Arabs into poor neighborhoods, laws that define national identity as exclusively Jewish, laws that restrict Palestinian political participation, laws that make it nearly impossible for Palestinians to reclaim stolen property. And in 2018, Israel made this explicit with the nation-state law. Israel declared the right to exercise national self-determination in the state of Israel is unique to the Jewish people. This wasn't a policy error. This was a constitutional declaration. Only Jews belong here. That means for Palestinians, whether Muslim, Christian, Druze, anyone not Jewish, you do not have a national identity under the law, which means that Palestinian schools are underfunded, their housing is restricted, their language is demoted, their votes hold little weight. These aren't just inequalities, they're tools of political suffocation. When a group has no access to power, no path to equality, they are being governed by force, not consent. Second-class citizenship by design. And even if a Palestinian wants to convert to Judaism in hopes of gaining legal equality, Israel's conversion authority denies these requests outright. This is not democracy. It's ethnocracy, ruled by a dominant settler group over a marginalized indigenous population. And in the West Bank, the discrimination is even more extreme. Illegal Jewish settlers live under Israeli civil law. They are tried in Israeli courts where the conviction rate is 3%. Palestinians live under Israeli military law. They're tried in military courts where the conviction rate is 99%. This isn't a metaphor. This is apartheid, and has been documented as such by Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and B'Tselem, an Israeli human rights group. Apartheid is not a slur. It's a legal definition, and Israel meets every single criteria. And again, this is not unprecedented. In 1851, the United States passed the Indian Appropriations Act, forcing Native Americans onto reservations, often barren land unsuitable for agriculture. Their ability to hunt, fish, and gather traditional foods was deliberately restricted. They were governed under separate laws and stripped of their identity, all while being portrayed to white Americans as savages, violent, and uncivilized. This is the settler colonial playbook: separate, subjugate, eliminate, and wrap it all in propaganda that paints the colonizer as the victim. This is not ancient history. It's happening right now in Palestine. Fact: there are two systems of law in the West Bank. One is civil law for Israeli settlers. The other is military law for Palestinians. According to human rights organization B'Tselem, Israel applies its own criminal and civil law to settlers living in the West Bank, even though they reside in occupied territory outside Israel's internationally recognized borders. Palestinians, on the other hand, live under military rule. They are subject to military orders. Their homes can be searched without warrants. They can be arrested without charges. Their children can be tried in military courts, some as young as 12 years old. Two people living side by side. One drives freely, builds freely, votes freely. The other is watched, restricted, caged. This is the textbook definition of apartheid: a system of institutionalized racial segregation and discrimination for the purpose of establishing and maintaining domination by one racial group over another. This is not metaphorical. It's not rhetorical. It is apartheid, codified in law, enforced daily, and normalized in Western media. Fact: Palestinians are imprisoned without trial indefinitely. It's called administrative detention. Israel can imprison any Palestinian on the basis of secret evidence without filing charges or holding a trial. According to B'Tselem, as of December 2024, over 3,300 Palestinians were being held under this system. They don't know what they're accused of. They are not told when or if they'll be released. Their lawyers can't challenge the evidence because it's classified. A military commander just has to say, This person might pose a threat in the future. That's it. And they can renew the detention again and again indefinitely. What does that do to a society? To families whose sons and daughters disappear for months or years without a trial? To children who grow up believing they could vanish for nothing? It teaches a lesson. Do not resist. You will be punished. You have no rights. You are ruled by force. Lay down and take it. And this isn't new. Under apartheid South Africa, the government passed what was called the General Law Amendment Act, more commonly known as the 90-Day Act. It gave police the power to arrest anyone without charges and hold them incommunicado for 90 days at a time, renewable endlessly. No lawyer, no family contact, no trial, just disappearance. The apartheid minister at the time bragged that it could be done until this side of eternity. That same colonial logic is alive in Israel's use of administrative detention today. Disappearance is a weapon. It's how settler colonial regimes crush resistance before it begins, by making people fear that simply existing is a threat, that your life is not your own, that your future is not promised, and that no one will come to save you. Fact: in 2023 alone, over 4,000 Palestinians were forcibly displaced in the West Bank. Why? Because their homes didn't have Israeli-issued permits, which are almost impossible for Palestinians to obtain, because of frequent attacks from Israeli settlers in their villages, while soldiers look on. Because military bulldozers arrived in the morning without warning and flattened their houses. This is not about law enforcement. This is about land theft, slow but consistent. Of the displaced, 1,152 were forced to demolish their own homes or have them destroyed. 173 were evicted as collective punishment for alleged actions by relatives. 921 lost homes during military operations that left entire neighborhoods uninhabitable. Over 1,500 were displaced by settler violence and movement restrictions. Again, this is just 2023, and half of those displaced were children. Imagine the trauma. You wake up one morning, soldiers surround your home. They give you 15 minutes to gather what you can. Then they level your life with a bulldozer. And you're told this is moral and legal. But this is not law. This is domination disguised as bureaucracy. Fact: Israeli settlers in the West Bank used 3 times more water than Palestinians. That's not just an inequality, that's a strategy. Israel controls all water infrastructure in Area C, 60% of the West Bank. If you're Palestinian and you want access to water, you need a permit, and permits are rarely granted. So what happens instead? Palestinian wells and springs are cemented shut. Rivers are diverted. The Israeli military destroys water tanks in Palestinian villages. Meanwhile, Israeli settlers enjoy flourishing vineyards, livestock farms, greenhouses, full state irrigation, unlimited access to drinking water. On the other side of the barbed wire, Palestinian farmers watch their fields die. The impact? Palestinian agriculture has shrunk to just 2.6% of West Bank GDP. This is not just theft of land. It's resource warfare. You don't always displace people with guns or bombs. Sometimes you do it with water valves. You dry out their future until leaving becomes their only option. And again, this is not new. This same playbook has been used before in the United States. A study titled Damnation revealed about 1.13 million acres of tribal land have been flooded under the reservoirs of 424 U.S. dams. That's more land than Great Smoky Mountains, Grand Teton, and Rocky Mountain National Parks combined. Entire ecosystems gone. Entire communities flooded. Let's take Fort Berthold as one example. 80% of the reservation's tribal members were displaced. 95% of their agricultural land destroyed, their hospital flooded, their tribal headquarters gone. They were moved to dry upland areas where crops could barely grow. Unemployment rose, food insecurity soared. This wasn't a natural disaster. This was settler infrastructure used as a weapon. And here's the devastating truth. Whether it's through dams or water denial, Colonial powers control land by controlling life, because life requires water. So when you dam a river, when you shut down a well, when you build a luxury vineyard next to a dying village, you're not just controlling nature, you're erasing people by targeting their ability to stay, to grow, and to exist. Fact: in early 2025, Israel launched Operation Iron Wall in the northern West Bank. The official goal: dispel the resistors. But what actually happened? Over 40,000 Palestinians forcibly displaced, families fleeing from Jenin, Tulkarm, and Ner Shams, homes demolished by bulldozers and airstrikes, tanks and armored vehicles rolling into refugee camps for their first time since the Second Intifada. The West Bank looks like a full-fledged war zone, but here's what's critical to understand. There is no Hamas in the West Bank. This isn't about Hamas. This is about land. This is about who gets to exist on it. Because when Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz says the military will remain in the camps throughout the coming year and the residents will not be allowed to return, he's not describing a temporary military operation. He's describing a policy of permanent removal to come. And under international law, that's called forced transfer. That's called ethnic cleansing, and it is a war crime. So what are we really looking at here? Not Hamas, not security, not self-defense. We're watching a settler colonial project do what settler colonial projects have always done. Militarize displacement, destroy housing, flood the area with settlers, and push the indigenous population into a corner until they have nowhere left to go. It's slow, it's steady, and it's happening with the approval or silence of the international community. But make no mistakes, this is not about Hamas. This is about Palestinian existence. It's about erasing people from their land, just like it was for the Native Americans, just like it was for the native South Africans, just like it was for every indigenous group the world has ever tried to make disappear. They don't want peace. They want the land. In part 2, I will dive into what's happening in Gaza, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing, the starvation, the devastation, and the excuses. I want to dedicate this video to my Palestinian friends, my Palestinian family members, and everybody in Palestine who is struggling through this genocide and who get up every day in these horrible conditions, but still persevere on. Free Palestine. You have the people on your side. Like and subscribe if this content is resonating with you and if you would like to see more.